In the summer of 1921, in the remote mountains of West Virginia, the largest armed uprising in American history since the Civil War erupted. Nearly 10,000 coal miners took up rifles and marched for justice, facing down company thugs, lawmen, and even the United States Army. This was the Battle of Blair Mountain, a forgotten war fought on American soil. To understand why miners rose in rebellion, we have to go back to the coalfields of southern West Virginia. Here, coal was king, and the miners lived under its brutal rule. Most miners didn't live free. They lived in company-owned towns, where every house, every store, even the doctor's office, belonged to the coal companies. If you were fired, you were kicked out of town, forced to live in makeshift tents or abandoned buildings. Instead of real wages, miners were often paid with company-issued scrip, company money that could only be used at company stores, where prices were inflated. Miners could request an advance from their wages. These debts kept families trapped, and speaking out against these unfair conditions could get a miner blacklisted, beaten, and even killed. By the early 1900s, miners had begun to organize, demanding better pay, shorter hours, and safer conditions. The companies responded with violence. Armed guards from the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency were hired to crush the unions. They patrolled coal camps, carrying machine guns and rifles. These men weren't just security guards, they were mercenaries. Miners called them gun thugs. If anyone dared to unionize, their job was to intimidate, harass, and sometimes kill. The rebellion truly began in May 1920 in a small town called Matewan, when Albert and Lee Felts, along with 11 other Baldwin Felts agents, tried to evict miners from company housing. The town's police chief, Sid Hatfield, and a group of deputized miners stood up to them. A gunfight broke out on the streets of Matewan. When the smoke cleared, 7 Baldwin Felts agents were dead, along with the town's mayor and 2 miners. The Matewan Massacre turned Sid Hatfield into a folk hero. He stood up to the company thugs and lived to tell the tale. A year later, in 1921, the coal companies struck back. Sid Hatfield was summoned to court in McDowell County for dynamiting a coal tipple. He walked to the courthouse steps. He was unarmed. Baldwin Felts agents gunned him down in cold blood in front of his wife. Then an agent walked down the steps and shot him in the back of the head. The murder of Sid Hatfield sent shockwaves across the coalfields. For miners, it was the final straw. Hatfield had been a symbol of resistance, and now he was dead. News of Hatfield's death spread like wildfire. Within days, thousands of miners began arming themselves. They tied red bandanas around their necks, giving the rise to the term redneck. Armed with hunting rifles, shotguns, and pistols, they began to march toward Mingo and Logan counties. Their goal was to free jailed miners, end martial law, violence from company thugs, and unionize the coalfields once and for all. They did not know it yet, but their march would lead to open warfare, and the largest battle ever fought on U.S. soil between American citizens and their own government. This was more than just a simple labor dispute. This was a war for their survival, and it was about to explode in the mountains of West Virginia. By late August 1921, the miners were on the move. Thousands of men, armed, angry, and determined, began marching through the coalfields. Their destination, Logan County, West Virginia, where Sheriff Don Chafin and his army of deputies, paid for by the coal companies, were waiting for them. Somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 miners joined the march. They weren't professional soldiers. Most were poor Appalachian men carrying hunting rifles and old shotguns. Put together, they formed a force larger than any U.S. Army had faced on home soil since the Civil War. Many believed they were fighting not just for themselves, but for their children's future. Standing in their way was Sheriff Don Chafin of Logan County, a loyal ally of the coal companies. Backed with company money, Chafin raised an army of about 3,000 men, deputies, strikebreakers, and hired gunmen. They dug trenches, set up machine guns, and fortified the ridges of Blair Mountain, the very ground the miners would have to cross to reach Logan County. On August 25, 1921, the battle began. As miners moved towards Logan County, Chafin's forces opened fire from the mountain ridges. The hills echoed with gunfire. Miners scrambled for cover, returning fire with their rifles. Soon the mountains of southern West Virginia became a war zone. President Warren G. Harding threatened to send federal troops and Army Martin MB-1 bombers. The miners attended a meeting and agreed to stop the fight, but rumors spread of more violence and civilian deaths. The miners returned and continued the fight. The battle raged for nearly a week. The miners fought fiercely, advancing up the slopes of Blair Mountain, but Chafin's men had the high ground. They used machine guns to pin down the miners. They even hired private planes to drop homemade bombs and leftover poison gas and high explosive shells from World War I. This was no longer a strike. It was open warfare. By some accounts, miners used military tactics, moving in squads, cutting supply lines, and outflanking enemy positions. But they were poorly armed compared to Chafin's well-financed army. As the fight escalated, word spread across the country. Coal companies claimed that the miners were dangerous radicals, communists and anarchists threatening the American way of life. In Washington, President Warren G. Harding grew alarmed. If the miners succeeded, it could inspire rebellions across America's industrial heartland. On September 1, 1921, President Harding made his decision. He ordered federal troops into West Virginia. Soon, thousands of U.S. Army soldiers, fresh from World War I, marched into the coalfields. Airplanes flew overhead, scouting for enemy positions. The miners, many of whom were veterans of World War I, did not want to fire on U.S. troops. The miners laid down their arms. They returned to their homes, many with nothing to show for their sacrifice. Many left their weapons behind. The Battle of Blair Mountain was over, but the cost of the rebellion had only just begun. After the battle, 985 miners were arrested and charged with crimes ranging from murder, conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to murder, and treason against the state of West Virginia. Dozens stood trial in the years that followed, including leaders accused of stirring up revolution. But despite the coal company's influence, many juries refused to convict the miners. At Bill Blizzard's trial, an unexploded shell was used by the defense against the government and coal companies. He was later acquitted. In the end, only a handful were sentenced, and most served little time. The last miner walked out of prison in 1925. With the rebellion crushed, the coal companies reasserted control. Union membership plummeted across southern West Virginia. The United Mine Workers of America would not recover its strength in the region for over a decade. But the story did not die completely. Over time, historians, writers, and descendants of the miners began to rediscover the truth. They pieced together the voices of those who fought, men who stood up for what they believed in, for dignity and fairness. The term redneck, once an insult, had roots in the red bandanas that the miners wore in solidarity. What was once a symbol of rebellion had become part of American identity. Today, preservation efforts continue to protect the battlefield from mining and development. The exact number killed in the battle is unknown, but estimates reach as high as 100. The Battle of Blair Mountain was more than a clash between miners and coal companies. It was a struggle for justice. Though the miners were defeated in 1921, their fight left a legacy that still echoes today. A reminder that ordinary people, when united, can shake the very foundation of power. I want to thank y'all for watching, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you on the next. Peace.